In times of old, the gods engaged in battles with each other in the world of Sudaidorga, but a long and peaceful period continued thereafter thanks to the Golden God who, while existing in spirit only, succeeded in suppressing the evil gods. However, wars erupt once again when a man chosen by the Golden God appears in the world. The man, Musha Gundam Mark III from the alternate world of Ark, is assailed by the Dark Emperor Sieg and ends up divided into two entities, good and evil. The evil half is manipulated by Sieg and wields his wicked power in Sudaidorga, his Satan Gundam. While the good half saves the Princess of Lacroix, despite losing his memory, and embarks on a journey to defeat Satan Gundam as Night Gundam. Hello and welcome back to another Gunpla review. Today we're taking a look at the SD BBLegend Night Gundam. Alright, and starting off as always with the articulation. Just like the Musha, I've stripped him down to make this easier. The head is on a barbell joint, and an easy 360 out of that. The shoulders are on a forward ball joint, so they can come up a bit too. Then there's a ball joint inside of that polycap. There's a ball joint in the shoulder for about 45 degrees outward, though with the other ball joint you can get an easy 90. Of course, since that's a ball joint, you get a bicep swivel. Then there's about a 90, maybe 85 degree bend at the elbow, though because of the cuts, you do get a bit more out of the wrist. And as always, the wrist is on a ball joint. Then you get a ball joint, as well as a slight side-to-side rock out of the waist. A ridiculous amount of range there, considering an SD. Ball joint hips for a pretty good amount of range. There's a nice little slant cut on the thigh there so that you can get it all the way out. And the feet are also ball jointed, though the shaping on them does make it a little bit hard to get them to go forward all the way. So there's not much else to say. It's a BBLegend, so it has amazing articulation for an SD. Alright, and getting into accessories, before we start off with color correction, I just want to quickly point out, this has a really nice manual. You get pretty much full art illustrations showing everything, but we'll get to that. But you do actually get a little manga in here. Unfortunately, I can't read Japanese, so I don't know what this is saying, but there are quite a few good, quite funny reaction panels here that you could totally make memes out of. I particularly like this one, if I can get it in focus, of him checking his watch, which is very funny. But anyway, moving on to actual accessories, let's start off with the sticker sheet, and by extension, color correction. Used a couple of the stickers on this, actually. Two of the eye stickers. As usual, you get forward-facing, right, left, and happy eyes. And in order to do that, and unfortunately because of the paint, this gets a little bit stuck. So, excuse me a second. Had to break out the old brick separator for that. But as you can see, you get one of these eye pieces, and you can choose two of the stickers, and you just rotate it around to whichever one you want. While I have the top of the head here, I also used the little 3 on the forehead there. The 3 is actually because this is one of the Musha Gundams, kind of. As you heard in the opening, unless you skipped that. This is half of Musha Mark III, which is a really weird concept. Anyway, the rest of these stickers are the rear camera on the helmet and the little front and back vents on the helmet. Obviously, I painted everything, aside from the eyes, because they're not sculpted, and there's no way I'm going to paint that. But honestly, the color isn't that bad on this. I mean, obviously you need to do like the vents in the face and the black in these chest vents. But aside from the stickers and that, this seems completely color separated. Now, obviously, you can probably tell I painted mine, but I didn't paint the blue or the red. And it looks really good. And I will bring in the runner, because this is the paint I used, and this is the plastic, and I mean, obviously the paint's going to look better because it's more opaque and looks more like metal, but plastic doesn't look bad. if you don't want to paint this, you don't have to. You're just going to get a little bit of swirling in it. But yeah, all the silver on this is painted. And speaking of, let's get into the accessories proper by talking about the weapons. Starting off with the lamer of the two, to be completely honest. Not that I dislike it. The lance, which just plugs onto this little back adapter thing. And this can also plug onto the cape, but you can technically plug it onto the back here. It's not a particularly tight connection, but you know, a little bit of blue tack, and if you wanted the unarmored one to have it, you totally could. Theoretically. But the much cooler accessory is the shield and sword, because the sword sheathes in the shield. And this is actually translucent red. They had one translucent red in the entire kit. Shield is fully color separated, and the handle is silver plastic. Obviously, again, I painted it, but it is fully color separated. It is starting to scuff the paint on the sword a little bit, and yeah, you're going to want to sort of sand down the inside of this a bit. You can kind of see I did it after I painted it, because I mean, it's the inside of the scabbard part anyway, you're never going to see it, but could probably be better. Also, as not to scuff any of the handles, you're gonna want to sort of modify the hands a little bit to be a little bit looser, just sort of scrape out a little bit of plastic. And speaking of the hands, before we armor them up, might as well just go over those quickly. Get two basic holding hands. They're hollow on the inside, but works fine. And then you also get a sort of default beam saber holding hand style thing. It does have the little spikes on the back cap, but this is almost identical to the one that showed up in the silhouette booster for the SDCS line. Like, the sculpt is pretty much dead on. And finally, you get the peace sign hand, which is hollow on the back, but don't worry about that. You're only supposed to see it from the front anyway. Pretty good sculpting. I really love that they include it, to be honest. It looks great. You could also use it as sort of a pointing hand if you wanted to. But anyway, let's get this guy armored up real quick. Here we have the Night Gundam all armored up. Man, it looks really good. I will say I did a matte top coat on the cape just to make it look a bit more like fabric. Not that it looks particularly bad when it looks like that, but you have to agree this looks better. And speaking of looking better, wow, this thing looks nice. Unfortunately, that cape does kind of limit the neck a little bit compared to what it was before, especially with the extra bit on the helmet here. Kind of still can turn fine, it's just not as much range. Speaking of the helmet, there is one little gimmick. This can sort of hold down only about that far. It almost covers the eyes properly. Looks better up anyway. It's just nice aesthetic in general. And this is the only piece on the kit that is back metal. Not that that's really a problem. It wasn't very much used on the Musha Gundam either. Honestly, it's just a really nice little thing that makes it pop. It's not distracting at all, and it doesn't look out of place alongside the other silver. Even the plastic. Now, like I was saying, this can plug here on the back. Does seem a little bit silly that it plugs on the outside of the cape, but nice silhouette, good storage. And aside from the neck, the armor doesn't really impede the articulation at all. Even with these bulky shoulders, you still get pretty much all the range you had before. And of course, the cape is articulated. I did manage to break mine because these pegs that hold these polycap ball joints on are hollow. I've since filled them in and repaired this one. But I'm still going to be very careful, but you know, it's ball jointed so you get a little wiggle room. Just be careful not to snap them off like I did. But that's not all, because as you probably noticed earlier, or in the thumbnail, the Night Gundam can become a Centaur. So let's change that up real quick. And here you have the Night Gundam in its Centaur mode, and man, this looks good. The added height really sort of de-SDifies him a little bit, but in a way that looks really nice. Kind of turns him into a cross-silhouette figure almost. Also, surprisingly, the ankle guards as knees looks pretty good. I wasn't expecting to like that as much as I do. Now, of course, I do have to mention, and I'll put up a picture, this can fold into like a boost backpack thing, but this is kind of hard to get off, and I don't want to have to, do that. Also, it doesn't even look that good anyway. It's a thing you can do. I don't really know why you'd want to use the Centaur parts as anything other than this, because again, it looks amazing. But technically you can if you want to. And as for a quick size comparison, normally I don't do an action pose for these, but I think having it in the Centaur mode rearing up kind of gets across the size of this kit. This is a really big SD. Like, it's pretty tall in the Centaur mode, and I mean, just look at how deep this thing goes. It is a large SD. So, to wrap this review up, the BBLegend Night Gundam is one of my favorite kits now. I didn't expect to say that for an SD, but this thing is amazing. The articulation for an SD is great. The color separation, even though I painted it, was pretty much perfect. And I mean, this design, why haven't they made anything aside from that one really expensive figure of the Night Gundam? You can really only get this as an SD, but this design is amazing. Why won't they make anything else with it? If you had any interest in getting this, pick one up. This is a gorgeous kit. Anyway, that's all for this review. Be sure to let me know what you think down in the comments below. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, helps a lot. Subscribe and hit the bell for future reviews. Go follow me on Twitter for updates. And consider supporting me on Patreon so I can keep making reviews just like this one. And as always, until next time, happy building.